Hey everyone, I'm Mark Sievers and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today I'm going to show you how to make a fabulous vegetarian appetizer perfect for cocktail parties or game nights or the holidays. It's really just a great appetizer just to have in your back pocket. And it's asparagus in blankets. So as a vegetarian, I don't get a lot of food at cocktail parties, I have to be honest. I do make up for it in the glasses of bubbles that I consume. But for me, I really love something little, chic, and that's 1 or 2 bites. And this is a riff on the classic pigs in a blanket, which I remember as a kid were the first things to go at holiday parties and, you know, game nights and all those things. And my asparagus in blankets are just, if not even better. So I'm gonna show you how to make first the asparagus in blankets and then the most luscious, gorgeous dipping sauce. So you don't really need a lot of ingredients for the actual asparagus in blankets. You just need some great, big, thick asparagus. I typically don't use the really big, thick ones. I like the thinner ones. I think they're a little bit more elegant, a little bit more kind of refined looking. But for this, I like to find ones that have really big, thick stalks because that's gonna make the puff pastry dough wrap around much easier. And speaking of puff pastry, of course, I'm not making my own and I'm not suggesting you do either. I'm back to my good old freezer staple, frozen puff pastry sheets. These are always in my freezer because I can make my gorgeous French apple and raspberry tart that I'll link down below. You can make my puff pastry buttery pinwheels, so many things with frozen puff pastry sheets. And they're really easy to work with. And I'm gonna show you exactly what I do so that you can just have the confidence to use puff pastry in your own kitchen. So let me give you a little overhead view of what I have going on. So for the asparagus, this does make quite a bit of asparagus in blankets because they also freeze quite well. So what I've done is I have about 16 stalks of this beautiful asparagus, and I'm just gonna trim the ends because the ends tend to be a little bit tough, and I'm gonna discard those. And I'm gonna then take my knife, nice big sharp knife, and I'm gonna divide the remaining of this stalk in thirds, and I'm just gonna eyeball it. You could measure if you want to, but I'm just gonna eyeball it, just like this. They don't have to be exact, they don't have to be perfect. And these essentially are the little asparaguses, asparagi, that are gonna get wrapped into puff pastry. So if you were serving these at a really fancy, uber chic cocktail party, you could only use the asparagus tips and reserve the rest of the asparagus stalks. You could roast them, make it into soup. You could have a roast vegetable later on. But I'm gonna make all of it because, like I said, these freeze really well. So that's the asparagus. I have them just a little bowl here. And now we're gonna move on to the puff pastry. So frozen puff pastry, there's really just a couple tricks to working with frozen puff pastry. The first trick is you have to let it thaw overnight in the refrigerator. We're just gonna use 1 sheet today, and I'm just gonna generously flour my surface. If it's a really hot day, you wanna do this in stages because it thaws fairly quickly, and there's so much butter in frozen puff pastry, and regular puff pastry, of course, that it does get really hard to handle. Even this has been sitting out for about 15 minutes, and it's gonna be a little tricky, I can tell. But first step is to get it nicely floured on both sides. Not a ton of flour, but you just wanna make sure that there is a generous amount of flour so that it moves around on your rolling pin, on your surface actually, and your rolling pin. So the next step is I want to get this to be about a 12-inch by 12-inch square. And I have my little handy dandy ruler here. So that looks pretty good. You have to get a little, and I'm gonna flip it over. See, and just kind of dust it a little bit as you go. And notice I'm rolling from the inside out. And that kind of keeps it as much of a square as possible. Measure again. This is great. So I'm just gonna take, let's see, I'm just gonna take my pastry brush that I'm gonna use for the egg wash and just kind of brush the excess flour around it away. And you can, there's a lot of flour on it, you can dust it off a little bit, just like that. Perfect. I never said I was a neat baker. I definitely am a little bit on the messy side. And then I'm gonna take my ruler, make sure this is 12. Okay. Et voila, there we go. So take my ruler, and I'm gonna mark every inch. And this is gonna give us the, kind of the little grid to cut our puff pastry. So that's perfect. And then I'm just gonna take my ruler. You know what? I won't even use a ruler for that. I'm just gonna flour my knife a little bit in case it needs it. And I'm just gonna eyeball it. And I'm just making some cuts. And then we're going to cut this, cut these in half. So I'm going to measure again, 6, cut them right in half. And then I'm going to cut those halves in half again. And this is going to give us pretty symmetrical asparagus and blankets. You know, I've really stopped trying to make everything so perfect when it comes to cooking and baking. I want people to know that I made this from scratch and that it's okay that things aren't looking like it came from a factory. So now I'm gonna take some egg wash and I'm just gonna brush the bottom of each of the little blankets. So there's 4 because we want, this is what we're gonna wrap the pastry or the asparagus in, and we wanna make sure that as we're rolling them, that they stick. Whoops. You wanna try to handle it, the puff pastry, with your hands as least as possible because that warms it up pretty quickly. So like I was saying, if this is a really warm day, you may have to roll it out, maybe put it onto a sheet, a parchment-lined baking sheet, put it in the fridge, let it firm up, take it out, cut it, let it firm up again in the refrigerator. But that's really the only finicky part, right? You just really have to make sure that it stays as cold as possible. So now, let's get to wrapping. So this is, I have a parchment-lined half sheet pan right here, and I'm just going to start rolling. So go up at the corner, roll away, and then that little egg wash, et voila. Put seam side down, and that little egg wash just makes that end stick. But how cute are these? And you can put them fairly close together because they do puff up, but they don't puff up enough to cover the asparagus. And this is where I said, if you were having a really fancy cocktail party, you know, the asparagus with the tips does look the prettiest. So you could always make a bunch of just with the asparagus tips and then maybe keep the other part of the stock wrapped up in the puff pastry dough in the freezer for, you know, a snack when it's just something casual or you have just some of your good friends over. But I don't know, I kind of like these, I think they look great regardless. So now I'm just gonna go finish rolling the rest of them. Okay, so that wasn't so hard. So you get 48 asparagus in blankets. So from here, if you didn't want to bake them off and you wanted to freeze them maybe for a couple days or into a week, you can take this entire sheet pan, put it into the freezer, let them get nice and hard and the puff pastry back to frozen. Then you can transfer them into just a freezer Ziploc bag, and you can bake them off at your leisure, how many you need, or you can bake them off right now, which is exactly what I'm gonna do. So first, we're gonna put a little bit more egg wash on them. So, little egg wash. And again, after the egg wash, and I have a few more things to put on top of them. But if it's really warm, you'd want to put them into the refrigerator to kind of refirm up and you get them nice and cold. But I keep my apartment like a refrigerator, so this is nice and cold. Now for the good stuff. So I'm gonna put on a little bit of my fleur de sel, which is French sea salt. This is gonna give them really good flavor. If you don't have French fleur de sel in your cabinet, I highly suggest you order some. You can get it online, you can get it in specialty stores. It is one of my favorite salts. It's like a beautiful, soft, briny flavor. And it has that little bit of crunch that I like. And now some black pepper. Sprinkle this on. Give it a little more spicy bite. Actually, we're just gonna do just like this. Put as much or as little pepper as you like. And now some Gruyere cheese. So what I love about these is that they're almost like a little meal within itself. You can actually serve these as a side dish. You can serve them right out of their oven hot. You can serve them room temperature. But the Gruyere cheese really gives it this nutty, gorgeous flavor. So I have my microplane or a rasp, and what I love about this is that it just creates this perfectly fine shred of Gruyere cheese. And I'm not worrying about if any of the cheese gets onto the asparagus itself, but I definitely want to make sure it does get onto the puff pastry. Gruyere cheese is one of the magic cheeses. It has a beautiful nutty flavor and it melts. I use it in a lot of things, in grilled cheese sandwiches and mac and cheese and all kinds of lovely things. See, so this isn't so complicated. I think when people think of little bite-sized things, they think everything has to be done with tweezers and it's gonna be this big, long, complicated process, but really the most complicated process, or shouldn't even say complicated, the most time consuming was just rolling them. And that took me just a few minutes. So let's bake these. So my oven is preheated to 400 degrees, and I'm gonna bake them anywhere between 15 and 20 minutes, depending on how hot your oven actually is at 400 degrees. You want them to be deeply golden brown, puffed up, and your house is gonna smell like a French patisserie. So let's go start baking. So that'll be delicious. I'm gonna clean up. I'm gonna set my timer first for 15 minutes. I'm gonna clean up the island, and next we'll make the dipping sauce for them. Okay, so my asparagus and blankets are baking away in the oven, and I promised you the most luscious sauce, and this is gonna come together in minutes. So in a small bowl, I'm just gonna add about a cup of mayonnaise. Hopefully it doesn't make that lovely squirty sound. It didn't, perfect. Well, it did. I'm gonna add 3 tablespoons of creme fraiche. Creme fraiche is another one of those ingredients that I always have in my refrigerator. It's like a French version of sour cream. It's delicious. I use it a lot by itself too on like desserts. It tastes really good on just plain chocolate cake. And I'm gonna put in some whole grain mustard, so about 3 teaspoons. Asparagus, mustard, kind of go together, right? And some Dijon mustard. Dijon mustard again. So the whole grain mustard's gonna look like mustard in the sauce. And then the Dijon mustard is gonna give this a really kind of piquant flavor. Perfect. And then some lemon zest, because asparagus, lemon, Gruyere, another classic combination. And I'm just, again, using that same microplane or rasp that I used for the Gruyere cheese. I'm just using it now for my lemon zest. And I'm gonna put in, this is a pretty large lemon. So I'm gonna put in all of it. If you have really small lemons, you can start with 1.5 maybe and see, but I like lemon zest. And remember, this is gonna be the dipping sauce for those asparagus and blankets. So you really wanna give it kind of a good power pack of flavor. And then let's put in some salt, about a 1/2 teaspoon of, I'm just using now sea salt, and then about a 1/2 teaspoon of freshly cracked black pepper, and some dill. So you can use dill, parsley, thyme, basil, but I like dill because I have some on hand. But this is kind of one of those sauces that you can adapt. So I just have some fresh dill, and I'm just gonna give it a nice chop, nice rough chop. Nothing too complicated. Perfect. That looks great. I would say anywhere between 1.5 to 2 tablespoons. I like lots of flavor, so I'm gonna put, this is about 2 tablespoons. I'm gonna put all that dill in. What I love about this sauce is how quickly it comes together, and it really doesn't include any ingredients that are hard to find. And give it a whisk. Fresh dill. Ryan loves dill. So I'm sure that he will want to use this sauce on more than just these asparagus and blankets. It's actually a great sauce. You could put this on, in the summertime, you could put this on hamburgers or hot dogs. Even though I'm a vegetarian, I still understand how this would be delicious on those, this is a summer condiment. This would also be good on a tartine, maybe with some cheese, but look how easy that is. So let's give it a taste here. It's bright, it's lemony, it's dilly. Is that even a word? So for my asparagus and blankets, I have a nice little cake stand and a silver bowl. You can use any type of vessel, just a tray, a platter. Ooh, do you hear the timer? I mean, how good is that? So put this in a little bowl. Let's go get our asparagus and blankets. Oh my goodness. Wait until you see these. They're puffed, they're golden, they're delicious. Look at these. So these were about 20 minutes. Oh, they smell so good. So let's get them arranged on this platter. These are gonna be really hot, but that's okay. So what a lovely hors d'oeuvre for a cocktail party, or these are really hot. So before serving these, I would let these cool for a few minutes before trying to handle them. But I just want to show you how gorgeous they look on this platter. And one of the great things is because the puff pastry is nice and crisp on the bottom. Can you hear this? Hear that? Nice and crisp. You can actually stack them. They don't need to be a single layer. So that's what I love about something like this, is that you don't need multiple trays of these to be on a buffet, or you can just really serve them all stacked up. And I think that kind of takes that prissiness away from them. It makes them a little bit more substantial looking. Doesn't make them too darling looking. But look at how gorgeous. So, et voila. Asparagus and blankets. Gruyere cheese, delicious puff pastry, and this gorgeous lemon, mustard, and dill sauce. I would say these are amazing. Look at that, how pretty. I love this. All right, let's see if I can take a bite, if they're gonna be really hot. Let's see. Oh my God. The asparagus is so perfectly cooked. It's tender. The puff pastry is buttery. The sauce is perfection. Asparagus and blankets. I hope you loved this recipe. Please give this video a thumbs up. Head over to marcsievers.com for the full written recipe for the asparagus and blankets and that gorgeous mustard sauce. And subscribe to my channel. I have so many great videos coming your way, and I don't want you to miss a single thing. So hit the little notification bell so you're notified of new videos as soon as they post. And I will see you guys really soon. I hope you make these. This is the problem. It's kind of like potato chips, you just can't have one. Oh. Bye guys. This recipe and more can be found on my website, marcsievers.com. Thanks for watching.